what are you moving from concept and planning into real implementation? And that's where I think staff, of course, is fantastic. And to the planning and development committee that have been really well received, very thorough, and help to educate all of us on common council. So I'm delighted that this commission is. I believe that we still may be looking for
3 members.
3 members. But not wanting to delay the start of the commission's work. So it's great to have the first official meeting of the commission today. Maybe helpful to go around.
Yes.
And actually, Iris, I wanted to say hello. I mean, I want to say hello to everyone, but if we're getting set up, I will mention that I worked for 30 years in ILR office services. And I believe
That's so amazing.
Yes, my undergraduate
All right.
time at ILR.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
So if you're in this community, and this maybe is back to one of your comments, if you're in this community long enough, you will interact, forget the 7 degrees of separation. It's closer to 1 or 2 degrees of separation. And that's one of the things I love about this community. And in many respects, at many times, it helps us to advance certain work, that we have relationships that we're building upon in the work that we're doing.
Thank you, Laura. Yeah, thank you, Laura. So why don't we go around and do introductions, and do you just, tell us who you are, what your background is, why you're so excited about being part of this commission. Why don't we start with Scott?
Hi, I'm Scott Doyle. I'm currently the Director of Energy Management and Sustainability. I've worked in community plan. I've most recently worked for 15 years at the Hopkins County Department of Planning and Sustainability. I worked in the state of Oregon as well for many years. Yeah, I'm excited to reconnect in some public services. Is actually very helpful for me too, I think, hopefully, to kind of do my work on campus to have a good pulse on things that are happening in the city and feed on that as well. I have got a reminder today from my friend and realtor. I've lived in my house for 18 years. I've raised my kids here, and I love this community and want to help move things to the next level with this work. So yeah, it's great to be here and great to reconnect with many of you. So great to see you.
Thank you, Scott. Okay. Iris.
Hi, I'm Iris Packman. I did grow up in Ithaca and went to Cornell, so I know Laura. And then moved away for career and I've returned about 4 years ago. 4 years in June. My realtor would also. And I have 2 young kids who we moved back here so they could go to the schools here because we had such. My husband is also from Ithaca. We both grew up and went through public schools here and loved it for ourselves and wanted it for our kids. And David knows my husband's family.
You're talking about degrees of separation.
Yes.
Next door neighbors for 30 years.
Turns out we ran into each other
Wow.
at a function at Cornell and then made that connection. So yes, it's a small town. Love this town. My work centers, I'm an attorney. My work is centered mostly on labor law, working for labor unions. And now I work through ILR at the Climate Jobs Institute, which does kind of applied research for New York State and different states throughout the country on making recommendations for creating a sustainable kind of clean energy economy that works for workers and specifically union workers, and makes recommendations for how to create high quality jobs while seeing that transition. And so I think I look at things at a very high level, and I'm excited to actually talk about it and the implementation of these programs at a local level in a community that's so dear to my heart. So happy to be here.
Hi, everybody. I have lived in Ithaca since I came to start graduate school here in 1978, so that's going to be quite a long time. And I started getting involved in county and city planning issues in the early 90s and years on a couple of the city's planning boards under a number of different mayors before kind of shifting. And I haven't been in City Hall for a very long time now. And was part at Cornell, first of Cornell's local government program, then of the Community and Regional Development Institute. So, very much centered on collective community decision making and dealing with issues, particularly with environmental kinds of aspects to them. I am currently a senior extension associate in the Department of Global Development. So I'm very interested in that context and the relationship between the local and the global around environmental issues. And I've increasingly gotten involved in the past 15 or 20 years in state and to some extent national sustainability education, climate education policy, and education even more than policy in particular. So my own kind of research and outreach agenda is focused days mostly on large scale renewables and particularly utility scale solar. I think of implications around that and community acceptability issues, and then also on climate driven related insurance issues. And since I've been here so long, I don't know all of you, but I know most of you because I've run into most of you. So thank you, including Al.
Yeah. So I guess we're all starting. I've been here 20 years. Raised my kids here, love the town, from the city, and so I'm a professor at Cornell. A lifelong passion for the environment, which led me to becoming a veterinarian and a research scientist, focusing on wildlife and endangered species and things and reproduction. And then over the years, gradually realized I needed to do more and more with people if we wanted to really effect any change. At Cornell, I had the pleasure of working with the Cornell Atkinson Center for Sustainability, being the faculty director for environment for a number of years, which is actually how I did. One of the offshoots of that was we did a brainstorming session on what was missing both in the world and also at Cornell, where we could really make an impact. And that was we created a new public health program that did things in a different way, recognizing that like some of the most pressing challenges we face boil down to two big questions, which is or issues, the unsustainable ways we interact with the environment and the inequitable ways that we interact with each other. And both of those things, of course, are directly relevant to this. So I'm the founding director of Cornell's public health program, and I'm also the chair of the new Department of Public and Ecosystem Health, which is a very new kind of direction in academia. Instead of being organized around like a common approach or issues, we are focused on challenges. So achieving healthy and sustainable food systems, tackling emerging health threats, including climate change, antimicrobial resistance, emerging infectious diseases, and then also conserving biodiversity. And I've had the pleasure of working with Rebecca on a project where we're trying to get some students working with also the Hugo Medical Center on the intersection of exposure to the particulate pollutants, PM 2.5, really small particles, and health problems.
My name is Christine O'Malley, and I work in preservation services for Historic Ithaca. And I've had a lot of experience in cultural resource management and a lot of great contact with the city, especially with the Ithaca City Cemetery, which is a very large green space, 16 acres. And we've had a great collaboration in terms of conservation and maintenance with Jean Grace and everybody in the city Parks Department. So it's been really great. Historic Ithaca just a few years ago became a founding partner of CROWD, which is Circularity, Reuse, Zero Waste Development, which is a partnership collaborative working group, including Historic Ithaca, the Susan Christopherson Center for Community Planning, Finger Lakes Reuse, 2 architecture labs at Cornell, the Circular Construction Lab and the Just Places Lab. And we have a website and we've been very active in developing policy and resource guides and trying to advocate for a deconstruction ordinance. Hopefully.
No pressure.
No pressure, no pressure. But that's, my primary interest is in adaptive reuse, deconstruction, and the circular economy, especially construction. So it's exciting that Ithaca has green building policies and we're moving in that direction. So it's great to be here.
We have a few people participating remotely. Tanya Saunders, our a commission member, and one of our 2 council liaisons, Chris Haynes Sharp. So would you like to introduce yourselves? Tanya, you want to go first?
Yes, I'm Tanya Saunders, as you said. I've lived in Ithaca for many years. I raised my children here, and I'm especially interested in the notion of climate justice and what that can mean for Ithaca, the city, as well as Tompkins County, generally speaking. And for many years, I've been associated with the Finger Lakes Environmental Film Festival. So you might say that my relationship to sustainability is somewhat tangential, but nevertheless heartfelt. So I'm happy to be of service. Thank you.
My name is Chris Haynes Sharp, and I am on Common Council, the 5th Ward alderperson. So Laura asked me to join this commission. I was really excited to be involved and to get to work with you folks. And let's see. Oh, I didn't start with how long I've been here. So I've been here about 25 years and raised a family here. Been a teacher, school administrator, and happy to be with you all. I do have to leave early today, so that's why I'm participating via Zoom. So I'll disappear in about 5 minutes.
All right. So Nick, would you like to introduce yourself? Nick is not a commission member, but he is participating today or observing today. So Nick, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you for letting me observe. My name is Nick Goldsmith. I was working with the town of Ithaca for about 10 years, a little over. 8 of those years, I was working jointly with the city and ended with the city just the very end of 2021. Had a short crossover with Rebecca in the sustainability office, whatever you want to call it. And I worked on the Ithaca Energy Code supplement, the regulations for new buildings, which I was very excited about. Helped with the Green New Deal also to get it in place and to implement it, and worked both in city, town operations as well as the broader community. So very high level of interest and engagement in this subject, and I'm hoping to get approval to join that actual official member in June. Just waiting approval from our board of trustees. I'm now with the Park Foundation and just started that about a month ago. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick. Oh, all right. Yeah. Deb, staff, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, no concern about Rebecca.
Yeah.
My name is Deb Mollenhoff. I'm currently serving as the chief of staff to the mayor. So thank you, Laura, for inviting me back to City Hall. Or are we starting with how long?
You could, yes.
To do some math. I guess it's over 30 years now. So I graduated from Ithaca College in 1992. Hi, Tanya. Good to see you again. And So I started there as a first year student and graduated and just didn't leave. So I've been here since then. I was involved in government, so many of you are familiar to me because I served on Common Council for 12 years, but I mostly had a career in higher education. And I think I'm here to talk to you today to answer any questions. I know you're going to go through a formal orientation process. I chaired the committee that took a look at the committee and commission and boards and volunteer structure in the city. And so we are just so thankful and so excited that all of you are willing to help us with this sort of reset, refresh. The pandemic kind of killed our community engagement and our citizen volunteer boards. And we learned some lessons from how the commissions functioned before the pandemic. And we took some time over the pandemic to take a look at how they could be structured moving forward. And you are our first attempt at putting them back and getting our robust citizen engagement back on track. So thank you very much for serving. And we're looking forward to using this commission as a way to kickstart the rest of them and get more volunteers connected to the city on issues that they're passionate about. So thank you for your service.
Thanks, Deb.
Thank you.
I'm Lisa Nicholas. I'm the Director of Planning and Development. I have lived here for 18 years and I've worked for the city that whole time. I started as a planner, moved here got my master's degree at the University of New Mexico, and moved here, then we lived in Georgia and moved here in 2005. And it's been a great community. I've really loved it. I've been the director for about 2 years. And I am so thankful that you all agreed to be on the commission. We talked about, as many of you, we spoke before you were appointed, and we often set up advisory committees or steering committees for projects like comprehensive plans or area plans or some big project, but sustainability is a project that's going to keep going on, and it will involve so many different multiple projects within that. We really felt like instead of an advisor, we needed a commission that would last a long time and have, terms and appointments. And so that's why it seemed like such a good fit to have a commission for this work rather than appointing a committee. So thank you. Well, I was going to start with something really exciting, which was, what's going on in sustainability, and save the boring, like this is what we have to do, and these are the rules we have to follow to the end. But maybe I'll start, I'm sure Rebecca will be back soon, but I can start with that. But Deb, if you would like to just say a little bit about the role of commissions, that would be also great.
Sure, I don't know. Do you have those other slides? That
I
you
do.
were using?
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to show those now or I'll work with whatever you need. I think just to give you some history, we used to have an extreme wide variety of committees, commissions, advisory council. There was this like a litany of, there were different kinds, they were different sizes, there were different kinds of appointments. Some of them stopped meeting for several years and nobody even noticed they weren't meeting anymore. So that just goes to show you, like, did we really need that group if no one noticed they haven't been meeting anyway? And then some of them were like the same 5 people had been exactly the same 5 people on the same commission. We're talking for literally 30 years, right? So we took a look at a number of different models all across the country, and we consolidated. I think the last count we had was 39 different volunteer boards, and we sorted the topics into themes that seemed to make sense. And we put 4 commissions in place, went through all of the approvals on council. We made some adjustments. We looked at numbers. We looked at how many people is reasonable. We looked at a whole number of different things and settled on this notion of a commission with people that would have the ability to really do a few main things. We wanted a group of people that were really sort of committed and passionate about the topic that could serve almost as an extension of city staff. So like really there to support the staff and the city's goals and priorities, but to give robust feedback to the work that the city was doing around a particular topic or issue. And so that's sort of the one piece of it. Another piece of it was to expand the network and the outreach of who city staff might be reaching. Often we would hear a complaint that nobody knows about anything until it comes to the final vote at Common Council, right? So we wanted to build more of a pipeline of engagement so that people felt that they had a way to engage with issues that were important to them earlier in the process. So we were hoping the commissions would serve as an opportunity for you all to help us do outreach to the community if there are issues that we want feedback on, that then we had all of you helping to amplify that voice of the city and get people connected so they could provide input and feedback. And then the third way we're really looking at the role of a commission is to almost use you as like a little mini consultant team, was sort of what we're looking at. There might be opportunities where, you know, like, so for example, in order to create the commissions, some of what our working group members did was actually do some benchmarking and research about what do commissions look like in other cities, right? In many instances, we don't have to recreate the wheel here in Ithaca. There are many other municipalities that might have done something similar. So it could be helpful for a group of people willing to take a slice of a topic and do some benchmarking research and kind of give that feedback back to the city. So those are sort of that's the functionality of why we went with the commissions model instead of the smaller one. Not going to go into the litany of what went wrong the first time we tried.
Don't do that.
But what I am going to do is say that we are still committed to making this work. Hopefully we're on the other side of the pandemic now, and the crossover of having everyone have to be so isolated with the timing of when the commissions were started, we think that just sort of added to, I would say, their demise. And to reset that. Is there that one slide that you had that has the 3 different kind of buckets?
Yeah.
Yeah, this one.
Hang on, let me move this.
So you can go through the examples, but I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss anything or highlight. So essentially, this is what I talked about is the main goal or function of the commission: provide technical and expert advice for project and program development. And I think when you go through this more formally later, Rebecca and Lisa are going to give you some examples of what we mean by that, like what would this commission might be doing with regard to that function. Provide recommendations to council on new legislation, plans, or funding. Sometimes what would happen at the council level is something would get all the way to council and we would feel like, I really don't have a good sense of how the public feels about this, right? We haven't heard a lot about this. We haven't heard a topic. So between that one and the next one, provide opportunities for public information and engagement. Council might ask the commission to hold a forum or an information session or something additional around a topic. So we can make sure we've done due diligence in the community being aware that the council is about to take something up. I'll give you a great example. When the commissions were functioning, one of the things that we charged one of the commissions with was to do some additional outreach around dogs on the commons. You know, we thought for sure that this was going to be a topic that would have a much higher level of engagement at the council level. We didn't want to just make a decision without feeling like we heard from everyone. So we asked the commission to go back and do some additional, you could do a survey, you could hold an information session, you could host it as a special topic as a part of the commission, but just make sure that we've done everything that we could to hear from all of the voices, diverse voices, that we've done enough outreach before it goes to that final vote for council. And then that last thing, undertake special projects as time and resources allow. So this could be where we might say, are a couple of you willing to help us do some benchmarking, or might a couple of you be willing to read these reports and give us, you know, some feedback on that. So I'm not going to say any more. I just wanted to give you the concept framework for why we have commissions now instead of these other sort of semi-functional erratic organizations. And one of the other, this is the last thing that I want to say is we felt that we're at a place where we had constructed something that was no longer sustainable and had no possibility of growth, right? And sustainability is one of the issues where this sort of came to a head because when we knew we were about to undertake some of these big projects like Green New Deal and really make a different level of commitment to sustainability and climate justice at the city, there was no room to add at that point, no staff time, no capacity. So we really had to take a look at how we were operating, what staff were doing. And if you think about the number of organizations or groups that we had before that all had to comply with open meetings law, that all needed minutes, that all needed staff to work with them, that all needed support from staff. You know, sometimes staff were going to 5, 6, 7, 8 different meetings throughout the week. By organizing in this fashion and by putting topics in themed buckets, it gave us the ability to flex with what the needs of the community are at the time, as well as the work that the city was doing and how we needed the community to engage with the city. So that's just high level overview of all of the commissions. And then I think Lisa and Rebecca are going to get into the exciting work you're going to be doing for us around sustainability.
Yeah. Thank you, Deb. Yeah. Thank
And I'm
you.
happy to take any questions if anybody has anything just about generic structure or operations.
I just have one question. So you said we're the first newly appointed commission kind of under this new regime.
Yes.
I mean, there are a lot of other still existing boards and committees that aren't called commissions, right?
So I should have explained that we did not touch anything that was identified as quasi judicial, right?
Okay,
So
you might need to define.
everything that quasi judicial, for people that don't know, are things that have to exist because of particular legislation, local legislation, state legislation. So for example, the BZA, the ILPC, the planning board. What am I missing? It's quasi judicial. Well, Board of Public Works, they haven't been.
The
Public Works.
boarding code, zone of building code zone, board
Yeah,
of
all those
appeals.
laws, yeah.
Well,
That's
ILPC.
Yeah,
Yep, yep.
yeah.
Mhm.
Those are legislatively mandated and required, so those were in a category by themselves. So when we looked at the commissions, we only looked at ones that were advisory capacity. So you are only in advisory capacity. You can make tons of recommendations, but you don't have any final decision-making authority. What you would do ultimately would probably end up going, if there is action that you took here, the next step for it would be probably planning an economic development committee before it would move to council.
so bottom line is if we're smart, the target stays on the mayor's back.
That's right.
Well, I'll also add, if I may, there has been in the past, and now with this new commission, there are 2 common council members who are not voting members of the commission, but do serve as liaisons. So the council liaisons include Chris Haynes Sharp, who introduced herself, Tiffany Kumar, who can't be here today. But in addition to staff who can share information at council meetings, your liaisons can share information with the commission and also then take information from the commission and report it back to common council at a rate.
So Mayor Lewis, maybe you could also explain a little bit about, given that we're an advisory board fundamentally by definition, what, from the perspective of council in particular, is the function of our board voting? How difference does that make?
Well, it may make a difference in terms of your decision, for example, to take something to the committee, to the Planning and Economic Development Committee. You may decide to take a vote in your group, in your commission, to further something on to one of the 2 standing committees.
So I'm asking because, I'm guessing, since this is Ithaca, that we won't always agree on everything, and they're trying to,
Right.
I'm trying to kind of understand, whether it's just a form, when we vote, I don't even know what we would vote on yet, but when we vote, is that kind of do they have any formal status, or is it just kind of them,
No, it would be a vote in your commission. So for example, I was liaison while on council to the Community Life Commission. And one of the things we discussed, there were presentations about public art. In some instances to one of the standing.
That's right. I think I would add that many, well, the quasi judicial boards too, they make advisory recommendations to Common Council and they vote on those. So, you know, say you were going to make a recommendation to adopt the climate action plan, that would, you know, certainly bear some weight with councils.
And I think from my perspective, there are areas of expertise in this room that we don't necessarily have in City Hall, or that may not be available sort of on a monthly basis. So having an opportunity to sort of pick brains and tap into that expertise in a more formal way is valuable to me. And I think it also is providing a level of transparency that, you know, like all organizations typically tend to be siloed. Having another level of transparency that it's not just, you know, Rebecca off somewhere making up some crazy idea and promising you that it's going to work, that, you know, we have some experts in the field that are saying, yes, this is, you know, financially sound or technically sound or whatever it is. So I think for me, it's twofold, that I get the support that I need as staff, but also that any of the programs that we suggest get the support that they need as well.
And the analysis.
Mhm.
Yes. So there may not be a lot of votes that you take,
Right.
you know, that may not be a big. Yeah. So, any other questions for, yeah, so,
We're probably gonna skedaddle.
okay. Since,
Of course.
so these are the things we need to cover. And, you know, Deb just talked about the role of the commissions. I need to talk about some of the procedures that shouldn't go, that should go fairly quickly in the work program. And then Rebecca's going to talk about what is going on with the Green New Deal right now, or sustainability work. And we can see how you might be involved with that. So I just need to get through some, you know, procedural things here. So the commission membership is 9 voting members, 7 of which must be city residents, and they are appointed by the mayor. We now have 6 members, and we are working to fill the remaining members. And if any of you have any suggestions, please let us know. We have a online application, and we'd love to entertain other candidates.
But they need to be city.
They all need to be city residents. There's 2 council liaisons, which Chris Haynes Sharp, who you met, and Tiffany Kumar. And you can have up to 10 non-voting advisors. So you can invite other people to be advisory to you on this commission, as I imagine, as you work through different projects. Many people will come up in the community that you may want to invite to be advisors for a short time or a longer time. And there's no, for that, there's no requirement that they are city residents. No, they do not. That is up to you, who you want as advisors. Yeah. Yes, we've already talked about, I can't think of who, we've already talked about people who might serve in that
Or
capacity.
we would formally name them as advisors.
Well, that's a good question. I don't know that they have to be
I'm
formed.
just wondering why up to 10.
It is
Can
in
it
the, yeah,
rotate?
right. It is in the legislation up to 10. I don't think they have to be appointed, but I'll check on that. Yeah. But you're right. 10 seems like a lot. Maybe, yeah,
Yeah, 11. Yeah.
exactly. All right. And 2-year terms. Let me see if I can get rid of this. 2-year terms, as you noticed when you got appointed, I had to kind of work with the terms so that they ended up being a little bit longer, so that we had people weren't ending at the end of the year. Well, just let me go. All right, this is from our charter, from our code, the duties of the commission duties. You can look at it. I can send it to you. At some point, we'll have a manual that will say exactly, what it says in our code that this commission is supposed to do. But as we talked about, as Deb talked about, this is kind of how we were thinking about it. So, I mean, I want to say that the provide opportunities for public information engagement, I feel like that is so huge, even if, you know, yes, people may come to this commission and speak, you may have, and you'll, you know, give you input, you may decide to hold an event, but I think, or a public forum or something, but I think just having, all of the meetings will be live streamed and recorded, and it'll give the public the opportunity to see what's going on with this work on a monthly basis. We don't have actually anything like that now. We do sometimes give updates to Common Council, but this, just watching this, the proceedings of this commission will allow people in the public to know what's going on with sustainability, which I think is huge. All right, so these are just some of the ideas that we were thinking of. So providing technical and expert advice. We have the climate action plan coming up, and Rebecca's feeling like she would like some guidance on how to approach the particular part of it. That is one thing this commission could do. Develop strategies on workforce development, evaluate methods to track building performance. These are all things that we're actually working on, and maybe you won't do all of them, but these are all things I could actually see this commission, or we could actually see this commission undertaking. Recommendations to Common Council when things go for vote. We already talked about that. It's really helpful to have this body either, you know, vetting legislation, plans, proposals for funding, and also potentially inviting the public to do the same before it goes to Common Council and they have to make a vote. So just another sort of layer of review and support for anything that goes forward. We talked about engagement, and, you know, depending on how much work we have and people's desires and our needs, there may be definitely the opportunity for the commission to take on projects. Such as these things. Okay, so open meetings law. This is the really boring part, but it's really important. This commission is subject to open meetings law. That means that quorum must be present in the room to conduct business. So for this commission, it's a 9-member commission, so that's 5 people. It doesn't matter how many people we have appointed, that's 5 people. So we will try to get more members appointed soon, but we do need to have a quorum in the room. You can participate remotely if you have an extraordinary circumstance. This is new to open meetings law since the pandemic. An extraordinary circumstance includes many things, and the chair determines whether something meets an extraordinary circumstance. Staff is perfectly happy to advise on that. It's not a vacation, you know, but it could be an illness. It could be a travel that you have to do to take care of somebody. So that is the rule. We can talk more about that if you want, but regardless if somebody's participating remotely, there still has to be a quorum in the room to conduct business. Also, members of the public must be given the opportunity to observe proceedings in person. That's why we have to be in person. We always give people the opportunity to watch. This is live streamed. People can, it's right on the agenda. You can watch by live stream. When we have public comment, people can come in and give public comment into the Zoom meeting, but we have to give people that opportunity. We have to produce minutes, and we have to notice meetings, all of this will be coordinated by staff, but I just wanted you to understand what we have to work with. All right, agenda planning and staffing. So you do have 2 staff members who will be doing all the agenda preparation, all of the background work to get this committee functioning. So you don't have to worry about that. But how agendas are made is that either we'll work with the chair and the committee and the commission to set agendas for the next meeting, but it should be based on the work plan, and you will have influence on the work plan as we get farther in on the work. Or maybe Common Council may say to you, could this be on the agenda? Could you discuss this at your next commission meeting? commission.
Question.
Oh, yeah,
Could
David.
you just be more specific about when you refer to the work plan,
Mhm.
whose work plan?
So the work plan of sustainability. So the next thing we're going to talk about is what we're working on currently. And yes,
I mean, is this Rebecca's? agenda,
Rebecca's.
council? Rebecca's.
yeah. Well, I mean, the work plan is evolving, it needs, so it'll be Rebecca's work plan. Yeah.
The
Or the sustainability work
office.
plan. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just, there was.
Yes, there were multiple possibilities. Yeah. And we'll talk about that when she has shows her work plan.
Rebecca and her possible.
Maybe. Yeah. So common council may ask you to take on an agenda item. Other, anybody on the commission may propose an agenda item. And the chair and staff will finalize the agenda and make sure it gets published. But an agenda can always be amended on the floor. We'll do that as part of every meeting. Okay, so this is what the agendas will look like. I'm going to try to move this box so you can see. All right, there we go. This is what the agendas for the meeting will look like. So there'll be a call to order. We'll look at the agenda. We'll review it. At that point, if anybody wants to add anything or take anything off, or if there's any updates to the agenda, that will happen then, and then we'll approve minutes. We have to make minutes for these meetings. My feeling is personally that it's already recorded. The meeting will be available on YouTube. I would like to keep the minutes as minimal as possible for staff time, but we will approve minutes at the beginning of every meeting. We will have time at the beginning of each meeting for public comment. Should people choose to do that, they can either write to you and get the public comment, or we can let them into the Zoom meeting, or they can come in person and make public comment. And if you have a response to that comment, that would be next. Then there would be announcements and reports and presentations. This might be where, and you'll see in what we are imagining the work plan of the commission to be for the next few months. There might be an educational component. So we need to really get you up to speed on CCA. So that will be under reports, presentations, or you may decide to have somebody come in to present on a particular topic. That would be that. And then there'll just be old and new business. We'll work down through the meeting that way. And then at the end of every meeting, we should wrap up by reminding the public and the commission members of the next meeting date and starting to talk about what we might want to have on the agenda for the next meeting. So our preliminary work plan for the first 3 months, Rebecca and I talked about what would be really helpful for a sustainability for the commission to start to do over the next 3 months. And would you like to talk about this, Rebecca?
Sure. So I think, none of these, except for CCA, have really hard deadlines in terms of what's expected on behalf of council, I think. So in terms of what has already been developed, these are some of the more mature, programs within the Green New Deal. Was that a question?
It was just like an alertness, like maybe I don't know, maybe everybody knows what CCA stands for already, but there will, I'm sure, in this arena, lots of acronyms as there always is. So maybe we could prompt you.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and particularly for the public.
Yes.
And don't want to talk about.
Yeah,
what it
definitely.
stands.
So we'll start with, as Lisa mentioned, some guidance and discussion on the climate action plan and the approach to take to that. That's something that's been in development for several months now, but I'm kind of at a sticking point and would appreciate some feedback. And then we can talk a little bit about sort of the tentative framework for Justice 50, which is the equity lens that we're applying to the Green New Deal and its implementation, and also would be, at least in the capacity of this educational piece, is actually a programmatic element of the Green New Deal itself. In July, we'll talk about the Community Choice Aggregation, or CCA, implementation plan. We are working with a contractor to develop this, and unfortunately, our timeline keeps getting pushed out another 30 days just because of regulations coming from the Department of Public Service, but we should have it in hand in June, so that'll give Lisa and I some time to review it make sure that it's ready to come to you all and do a little presentation on that. And then talk a little bit about renter protections. This is something that I'm kind of hitting a wall on again, especially as it relates to the electrification program. So we'll talk about that, ad nauseum at that point. And then workforce development, and those two things in August. So the Green Jobs Corridor is our regional approach to workforce development. But we have some regional challenges that are not unique to this region, as I'm sure Iris could speak to at length, that we're having trouble sort of clearing the hurdles, and how do we create this corridor of opportunity within upstate New York. So I'll provide lots of information once we get to those months. And I don't know, and this is actually probably a question for you, Lisa, if it's appropriate to provide information ahead of time, or is that not appropriate given open meetings law?
Oh, it's very appropriate. You will get an agenda and any background materials before the meeting, if we're able to provide that. There will probably realistically will be times when we just bring something to you and present it and, ask for feedback on it or discussion. Yes.
That's it. Yeah.
Another logistical kind of
Yes.
question, like in general, and also like with what you're talking about today, does that go on the city? What kind of record of this? Saying you're recording meetings, is that, and where is it? Is it on this commission website or?
So a record of these meetings, there'll be our city public meetings YouTube channel. You can always go on there and look at any meeting that has happened. So that's the main way I always access meetings, if I'm trying to remember what happened, but it was also recorded, and I started recording this because recording it is a little bit redundant. I don't go back to the recordings because it's on YouTube. But we weren't sure about the sound quality, so I started to record it. And then there will be minutes. By far the most rich and, useful thing will be the YouTube videos.
How about just like, if you have a slide presentation, how would that, if we want to go back and look at that, how would that?
So that's a really good question, because that does happen, and we can make those available we can either put them in agenda packets, which would probably be the best thing, because then the public also has access to them. So in general, when somebody makes a presentation with a slide deck, we ask for it and distribute it to people, but probably putting it in the minutes might be the most, make it the most available to the public. Yeah. We also are looking at, improving the website. It can pretty much only be improved, and putting materials on there. And then, the agenda will be posted on the city website, and we also distribute it widely, the agendas. So, yeah.
But slide decks, as far as this room is concerned, those would be made available either before or after in any form or fashion.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay. Just not to the public.
Well, the public should have access to the slide decks, and sometimes we put them in the minutes of the previous meetings so that they have. Yeah.
I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, I mean, a certain amount that we will build. And for instance, all right, so this is our general idea for the work plan, but what we'd like to do is build a shared drive for commission members and maybe some of this needs to be on a website. We can do this as we're going along, but it's already been mentioned, a list of terms and definitions, including acronyms. We're going to start to build that, and we'll put it on a shared drive. The Green New Deal resolution should be in there, agendas and supporting materials. And we're building this shared drive so that also you can drop things in there, so that if you have an article or information that you think would be helpful, you can drop things in there. So we'll organize it and give you access to it before the next meeting. And then, again, part of this group's what we would like help with is what is the best way to make everything available to the public? What makes the most sense? We don't have a communications position here, and we do our best to comply with the law and also try to do better than that. But your input on what you think would be helpful for the public would be really great. So that is coming. All right. Questions about that?
Comment in the chat.
I'm just gonna.
Are we able to access these slides after the meeting?
Yes.
Yes.
So we will.
Send them the question before, yeah.
So we have set up a shared drive, but we can just send you everything from today right at the end, right after the meeting. And then we'll store it somewhere where you have access to it. You don't have to sift through your email.
Are there materials that you would like us to review before the next meeting?
That's a good question. Potentially, yes. As far as the immediate next meeting, probably not. Climate action plan, no one has seen it yet. So I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of feedback.
So maybe for that kind of thing, you will present to the group what a climate action plan is and then say, okay, we can go this way or this way. Let's debate what would be the best direction. If we're going to give you something that we want, specific feedback on, we will provide it to you before.
Nick's got his hand up too.
Nick. You're muted.
I unmuted my face. That took care. Thank you. Is it appropriate to talk about the timeline for the hiring the sustainability director?
Certainly, I imagine that is of great interest to this commission and everybody. So we are currently in the process of hiring the new director of sustainability. We have posted the job and received applications, and we have scheduled the first round of interviews next week.
Can you clarify what the responsibilities of that director will be and where they kind of fit in the city hierarchy?
So thank you. The director of sustainability is in the Department of Planning and Development. And so basically is responsible for coordinating the sustainability work, setting a program and coordinating sustainability work. But again, it's a new position. So we're finding that, maybe it also means collaborating with departments who are taking on their own work and keeping track of everything that's going on, coordinating with inside and outside, inside staff, but outside agencies. And so far there are two staff positions. There is the director of sustainability and the sustainability planner. So Rebecca is now serving as the acting director. She was previously the sustainability planner. And that again is in the Department of Planning and Development, of which I am the department head.
So after this hire, there will be two sustainable planners explicitly with sustainability responsibilities. Is that what you're saying?
There's the director of sustainability, and then there's a sustainability planner position.
Right. Okay.
So two positions. Yes. Does that answer your question, Nick? Okay. David? Yeah. Okay.
There's also a question there about the dates for June, July, and August.
Yes. So one of the things we need to do, and we can do this now and save all the really exciting stuff for the end, is we have to determine a date to meet. We need a Monday, the same Monday of every month. I would like to suggest the second Monday. We can start at 5 or 6 o'clock. Does the second Monday work for people?
So that's June the 13th.
That would be June 13th.
No, June 12th.
June 12th.
Oh, Monday, right.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I don't want to do it on Tuesdays. It worked for this group this time, but there are a lot of meetings on Tuesdays, and
Yeah, I
We
have
would-
other board meetings on Tuesday.
There's a lot of board meetings on Tuesdays, and Wednesdays are council meetings. So Monday would be ideal if we could do Mondays.
So that would be June 12th, July 10th, and August 14th.
Yes, once we have once we've agreed to a meeting schedule, then we'll do a calendar and send it out to you all. We can send you appointments. It's the second
Well, as of
Monday.
now, I can do that, the
Thank you.
second
Thank you.
Monday.
Does that seem reasonable to people? I mean, obviously, not everybody can come to every meeting, but it might be.
This for us, good.
Yeah. I mean, I think most of the time, except when travel.
Right.
Yeah, I also have a July conflict.
July 10th. Yeah. Yeah. I think the most important thing is to set, the second, third Monday, whatever, and then if we have to reschedule some meetings, we can do that.
So when was June? It was 12th.
June 12th, July 10th, August 14th. Summer could be different with a,
Five? Jake?
what, it's up to you. We can, we're not bound to start at any particular time. And I know different people have different preferences for when to start.
So I am probably not gonna be here on the 12th. I'm certainly gonna be. So, fine.
Oh, nice. Will you be here the following week?
Yeah. I see in general that.
Yeah, just because, yes, well,
The following week is Juneteenth.
is Juneteenth, which is a holiday. We don't want to do that. It's the first,
The 5th.
Mhm.
June 5th.
June 5th. The only, normally I would just say, okay, David won't be here, but because we don't have a full commission yet, we do need a quorum. So maybe we, eventually we need to be, it's the second Monday or the third Monday or
So
whatever.
basically out of town now, week. of the 12th.
Okay, so what about the first or the third
Yeah, we're-
Monday of June? We're looking at June.
The 3rd Monday is Juneteenth.
Okay,
So-
not the third Monday.
So we have
The
the first or the fourth.
Yeah,
So I have.
I can't do the first, so
okay.
I have board meetings on the fourth Monday. I know, I'm sorry. We're
No,
off to a
that's
really
fine.
bad start.
Okay, so how about we do this? Why don't we say that it'll be the second Monday? And we'll try to find an alternate time for this second meeting.
Okay.
How about that? So
At 5.
when do people want to start? 5 or 6 is about.
I like 5 PM.
Okay, that works for me. It's great to have an earlier meeting.
And how long or would they normally expect it to last?
The meetings?
Yeah.
Personally, I think we should try to keep it to 2 hours.
2 hours.
2 hours. Does that seem long? Yeah. No longer than 2 hours? 90 minutes?
With David chairing, it's definitely under that.
Yeah.
Are you saying
Yeah.
my propensity to talk to them?
Yes. I mean,
You got a good question.
I think we set up the agendas, we can talk about what
Right.
makes sense. We certainly would not want them to go beyond 2 hours. I'm sorry, I'm coming also from quasi judicial land where meetings last till, you know, all out, but you don't have to, I mean, this is an advisory board. You do not have to go.
Can I
yeah.
just say that, since I want to get a better sense of really what now her workload and your department's workload is, but sort of like what our workload is. I mean, I feel like for everybody in the climate world who volunteers, the climate work, some sense of urgency
Yes.
about getting things done. So particularly as an advisory board, as opposed to one that's making decisions on timelines, I would, particularly in the beginning, I'd really like to keep on time.
Yes.
Meetings that we do, and not keep it a little longer than they're expecting, but I would just wonder if there might be, as a question for us to consider as we go along and we learn more what we need to do, we might suggest that we need to have more meetings while we're getting to know each other, occasionally, or some special kinds of things. Sometimes I'm not recommending we do that, but I'm just concerned that even meeting once a month regularly just may not be enough to do what's needed to be done. I'm not predicting that. I'm just concerned about that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be tough to do less than an hour and a half.
Less than an hour. Yeah. Well, to David's point about what our workload, we're already at an hour and 10 minutes now. You won't have to do orientation next time. I'm going to suggest that we get into the work program that is currently underway, and that will, certainly shape the discussion of how we proceed. So.
Question about the meeting slot. I mean, if we need to email or can have informal conversation, or can we talk outside of the once a month meeting, or do we need to only have a conversation in this context?
That is a great question. I think it's fine to have email conversations. You are an advisory board, and I think that I can't see any public perception issue with you talking, us communicating by email. Right? The idea is whatever you recommend the public should be able to see your deliberations and whatever you recommend. So if you're, most of the in-depth conversation should be here. But if we communicate, exchange information by email, yes.
My experience with that over the years was in this kind of board that, and particularly in the kind of community we're in, that we're not really in legal jeopardy.
Right.
I mean, it is a law, but we're not. It's fine.
Exactly.
More about perceptions of deals kind of being struck.
Right.
And I think those are real.
Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
Close attention to that. So.
Yeah.
I would assume our emails would be subject to where.
Yes, they would.
So.
So be aware of that.
So say nice things about me.
Yes.
Well, seriously, I mean, there is, people do get subpoenaed occasionally, very rarely. I mean, you should be careful. You should be honest, but you should be careful about the kinds of language that you use in some public record.
Absolutely, everything is a public record. Also, you may be asked, I don't anticipate it, but I don't know. You may be asked, you may be contacted by the press. I understand you're on the, what can you say? And I just think that that's also a delicate area, on quasi judicial boards. We definitely tell people do not talk to the press because you're making decisions about people's property and, but we might want to have a discussion about that. What should you do if you're contacted by the press? Yeah. You may not be.
Right.
Oh, you will.
I think.
I said, they will. I can almost guarantee it.
I don't know what else you might talk about. I also feel some tension within the 4 areas of what we're charged to do, particularly about the extent to which we're perceived as and function as a technical advisory kind of group, which I don't know everybody here very well, but it sort of feels like that's what we've been selected for. give technical advice. And then the other piece of it is, that seems potentially very prominent and potentially even more time consuming would be sort of public engagement with the various constituencies, the we and the other people to be.
Mhm.
So, I'm not sure where we're gonna end up working or coming down on that, but I don't think they're necessarily the same types of people or even the same qualifications to the same kind of work that
Right.
do all those things best. So.
I agree. Yeah. I think that we will learn this as we proceed, So I would like, it is 6:15 or something like that. So I would like you to know, I'd like in terms of Rebecca to do her presentation on where we are with the sustainability work.
Yeah, I'm gonna try and jam through this quickly, but it's a little dense. It's also sort of a riff on a presentation that I gave to council at the beginning of the year. So if you're someone that enjoys watching public meetings, and this may look a little bit familiar to you. But just as a brief reminder, sort of the Green New Deal goals that were adopted within that resolution, overarchingly community-wide carbon neutrality by 2030. And there are some interim goals in there as well, including 100% renewable electricity in government operations by 2025. Technically, we have achieved this already by purchasing renewable energy certificates. However, I personally do not believe that is the best way to go about achieving this goal. So we are looking to other options, which I'll go into as well. But, on paper, we have achieved that interim goal. We also have committed to 50% reduction in fleet vehicle emissions from 2025. That says reduction in fleet vehicles. That's wrong. It should be vehicle emissions by 2025, although both would be acceptable. And we're working on that too. And again, I'll go into some more detail. Certainly facilitating a comprehensive public engagement process, which is part of why we're doing this commission. And then the lens through which we're doing all of this work, as I mentioned before, is ensuring that all community members share benefits to reduce social and economic inequities that are present today and have been for generations. So just an overview of kind of where we've been for the past 2 years or so. In 2021, we redefined the Green New Deal as 10 distinct program categories. Those are sort of big bucket programs, not necessarily specific projects. If you want to dig into the nitty gritty of projects, it's more like 35 to 40. And all of those are addressing the Green New Deal resolution, but have been broken up into like workforce development, distributed energy resources, electrification of buildings, decarbonizing the grid, et cetera, et cetera. And I'll keep saying these things over the next several months so that it's like second nature. We've also signed the Finger Lakes Energy Compact, which was in collaboration with Cornell and the town of Ithaca and Ithaca College, which establishes renewable energy targets for each of the individual stakeholders. They're different for each stakeholder. There may be some overlap, but the city is a signatory along with the 4 others. We also adopted the Energy Code Supplement, much thanks to Nick for that. Which requires net zero construction by 2026. So that's only new buildings. That does not apply to existing buildings. We've also done an electrification study. We're in the process of doing that, but it's been ongoing for the past 1.5 years or so to try and assess what are the impacts of electrification, both for vehicles and for buildings. What are the impacts to the grid? What are the financial implications? All of that sort of stuff. We also released an RFP. And this is what everybody has heard about for electrification of buildings. So seeking to electrify all 6,000 buildings by hiring a program manager, and I'll mention that in just a second, that would help coordinate and basically serve as a general contractor. So we released that our RFP in 2021, closed it late in 2021. And again, I'll go into the results of that in just a second. We also established the Green Jobs Corridor, which is a partnership with Elmira, Syracuse, Rochester, and Binghamton to try and basically leverage our collective resources and our collective workforces to try and reach all of our collective carbon neutrality goals. So that means providing wraparound services when we can afford to do that. But also, sharing training resources and all that sort of stuff. And that's an ongoing project as well. 2022, we completed greenhouse gas inventories for both government operations and community activities. That was part of a DEC grant, and those have been completed and have been published for operating year 2019. I'm hoping that we can do another one in the next, I don't know, probably looking more realistically in the fall semester, work with some of the local courses at Ithaca College or at Cornell to complete that. We also launched the Electrify Ithaca program. So we signed a contract with Block Power, who is that general contractor or program manager to the electrification program that I mentioned. And that launched in July 2022. So it took a while to get all of the details ironed out. It's a program that's the first of its kind in the entire world. So there were a lot of details to figure out. And that's why it took so long. But since it has launched and they've hired local staff to help facilitate and coordinate that program, and they've actually got several buildings in the pipeline already. We also completed a stock analysis, so doing a building asset analysis, so looking at what is the mechanical equipment that we actually have, when was it installed, what are the efficiency ratings of that equipment, and then of course looking at actually replacing that equipment with electric counterparts, and potentially it also included a geothermal analysis, and that was done with a Master of Engineering student at Cornell. We also passed a CCA local law. When I'm saying all of this out loud, I'm realizing how much has actually happened. We passed a CCA local law, which is really an enabling law. So again, this is community choice aggregation. It said that basically Common Council gives sustainability staff the green light to go ahead and explore and begin developing a CCA program and all of the requirements that are set forth by DPS and the Public Service Commission. So still in the process of that, as I mentioned earlier. During Lisa's presentation, we're expecting to receive that data protection plan, community engagement plan, and implementation plan in the beginning of June, hopefully by our next meeting. We also defined climate justice communities, which took guidance from the state and the feds they have respective definitions of disadvantaged communities. So those of whom are on the front line of climate change, or for whatever reason, life is exceptionally hard. And we took that guidance from the state and the feds and contextualized it given the existing landscape here. So when we actually tried to apply that criteria to the city, we found a ton of people that were falling through the cracks. Part of the reason for that is that we're relying really heavily on census tract data, and the fact that this is a college town makes that really, really unreliable. Not to mention there were a lot of problems with the 2020 census. So decided to take it in another direction entirely. And then finally, we did enter phase 2 on January 1 of 2023 of the energy code supplement, which just doubles the number of points. It functions a lot like LEED for buildings, where you have to achieve a certain number of points in order to get your building permit or what have you. So there are several projects that are sort of long-term projects that don't have hard timelines or deadlines. One is the CCA implementation plan. As I said, it started with that initial enabling law, and it has to have continued review, one from the city, then from the Public Service Commission, and from the state. So that's an ongoing project, though we do hope to have an official launch, what's looking like now mid-2024. And that would be, bulk purchasing of energy on behalf of residents, both for natural gas and electricity, to achieve one, a higher threshold of renewable content, and two, better pricing on that renewable content. Also working on a zero emissions transportation or ZET plan and a subsequent RFP that would enable the city to replace our fleet vehicles with electric counterparts and deploy both public and behind the fence electric vehicle charging infrastructure. This has been it's been snowballing a little bit and then melting and then snowballing again. and how we're actually going to try and make this work, but still trying to figure that out exactly. The climate action plan, which, you know, as it stands right now, does a pretty decent job, I think, of trying to analyze climate risks and mitigation strategies, as well as resilience, and then how are we ultimately going to pay for all of these things that we're trying to do here, which all, while really great, are very expensive. Justice 50, again, no hard deadline there. We do need to have the framework adopted at some point or accepted at some point. But that's going to be an ongoing effort to apply that lens to everything that we're doing and ensure that we're meeting whatever the requirements of that framework are. Electrification, we only have 6,000 buildings that we have to electrify. So presumably there will eventually be a stop to that, but it's nowhere in sight right now. So we'll continue to do education, outreach, and then actually do the retrofits and audits of the buildings themselves. And then at least in the relatively short term, continuing to monitor the Inflation Reduction Act and all of the cash that's going to start flowing and that already has started flowing, specifically to municipalities, but also to residential customers and to commercial customers that may be able, so that we can basically be a source of information for people as they're trying to navigate the electrification program, for example. And this was, I don't know how useful this is to all of you. You probably already know a lot of this, but I think it's worth mentioning the number of externalities that actually influence the Green New Deal that are well outside of city control. So, you know, what we hear a lot of is, why aren't you moving fast enough on whatever, fill in the blank? And unfortunately, there are things that are impacting the Green New Deal or climate mitigation in general that we just cannot control, whether it be because it's in the laps of the utility or the state or the federal government or what have you. So this is just a little bit of a breakdown of some of those things. And one of the things that I do think that this commission may be able to help with is that culture adoption piece, along with our other partners whom we've been working with for the past 2-3 years now. But, you know, state regulations, especially as it relates to community choice aggregation, the state of the grid, our electrical substations being overburdened, market pricing and supply chains, all of those things, while if they're functioning really well, are great, but when they're not, it really slows things down, not just for Ithaca, but for everybody. So you can take a closer look at this if you like at a later time, but I'll go ahead and move on. But some of the things that are working really well, what concrete obligation do contractors have to provide training? Oh, I can't see the.
What
It's
concrete
not going
obligations do
today.
contractors have to provide training and employment to local disadvantaged communities?
So contractors are not legislated by the city or any other municipality, to my knowledge, to provide any training whatsoever. It's usually out of the goodness of their hearts that they do provide that training. There are other organizations that provide workforce development training, like Cornell Cooperative Extension or BOCES or TC3, or, you know, fill in the blank, any of the educational institutions that, and they may partner with contractors, but no contractors is required to provide training of any kind. And a lot of that has to do with, sort of with a footnote of, we don't have enough workforce to actually do the work, let alone do the training. And we'll talk about this, I think it's in July or maybe in August, about workforce development in particular. But one of the challenges that we do have is that, and communities around the country, is that we don't have enough contractors to actually electrify all 6,000 buildings. And when you add an additional, I don't want to call it a burden, but when you add the additional responsibility of having to train new contractors or people wanting to enter into that field, it slows down work pretty substantially and can quickly become a bottleneck. So we need to find solutions to that. But working in our to our advantage right now is we do have a lot of support, especially with this new administration at the state and the federal level, that are starting to take climate change more seriously than they have been in the past. So there is new funding and there are new incentives that are starting to flow both to municipalities and to private residents that can take advantage of that funding. So one of my responsibilities has been to track the Inflation Reduction Act and the CLCPA and the funding that's becoming available there. See, I don't get them. I think she's sending them to you directly.
Oh, it's possible. She is. I'm thinking of the union apprenticeship programs that usually work with contractors on electrification.
Yeah, I don't know. I could not speak to whether or not individual unions are required to provide training. I know that they do. Maybe Iris, you know the answer to that.
It's more going to be about the requirements. If this is the contractor with the city, for example, the city could set requirements that in order to do business with the city, you have to provide or employ a certain percent of apprentices, or certain, and then that incentivizes the contractors to work with the union programs. And that's the kind of legislation that we, in my organization, look at in other states and localities. So that's something that I noted to try to see, what else might be possible at the state level, but then certainly the local level.
Great. So this is just a little bit of a breakdown of the IRA and how that money is being allocated. It's not terribly important for this conversation or even maybe future conversations, but I do think it's good to know and to be able to actually put a number on how much money we're really talking about coming from the federal government. It is a lot. We're in the billions of dollars now, rather than the millions of dollars that we have been in years past. So, this is good news, almost $400 billion going directly to energy and climate. And then, a little bit of that going to healthcare as well. Also, a little bit of information on the state's climate action plan, the CLCPA, or the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act. Again, none of this information is something that I think anyone expects anyone to remember, but these are the kinds of thematic areas that the state is looking at. And what I am trying to narrate here is that there's significant overlap, and the city is really at the forefront, is the rest of the state, and is leading the entire state towards the goals of the CLC, or achieving the goals of the CLCPA. So whether we like it or not, we are a little bit of a guinea pig and a test subject throughout the entire state, which provides us with a lot of outside resources that we otherwise would not have. But it also means that there's a critical lens that's always being applied to Ithaca, for better or worse. And this is just this is a little snapshot of what I've been working on so far, and what I see in the immediate future is projects that have been tinkering with over the past several months. So we received we received an earmark from Senator Schumer's office, or congressionally directed spending from Senator Schumer's office, in the amount of $1 million to establish a green hydrogen pilot program as a non-wires alternative. So what that does is it installs a solar array and connects to an electrolyzer that produces green hydrogen fuel, and then powers electric vehicles through an EV charging infrastructure. Please stop me if I'm I'm trying to make it as simple as I can. And that would be used by TCATS buses, of which they're adding, I think, another 12 electric buses to their fleet. So that is in the works, and it'll be a long-term project. Certainly, we're not expecting to see, hydrogen fuel cells up on South Berks campus in the next couple of months, but certainly we are getting all of our ducks in a row to get that paperwork ready. We're also looking at internal carbon pricing and sort of the cost of inaction. So one of the things that we've been talking about internally is there a way to provide, can we assign a dollar amount to carbon like we would any other building material, for example? So as we're making decisions, either in PEDC or city administration committee, whatever it may be, so that we can be able to compare apples to apples instead of just trying to have this nebulous conversation about carbon and the future of the world. So that's something that one of our interns has been working with, and she just finished, and it looks really great. Also looking at city infrastructure climate risk. So as temperatures begin to rise and humidity starts to rise and lasts a lot longer into the season, what does that actually mean for city buildings? You know, are we going to see big cracks in the foundation, building materials warping, what have you? And what is the material cost of those changes? We just released an RFP, I guess last month, 2 months ago, for energy assessments in city facilities. So what that's going to do is send some contractors into, well, send engineers into our facilities and look at where are the opportunities for energy efficiency, for renewables, for electrification, and then actually produce a roadmap for us. And that's on the asset by asset basis. So I mentioned we did that asset inventory. So instead of looking at, okay, let's fully electrify City Hall year one, it'll actually take all of those energy efficiency and electrification measures and figure out where can we get the biggest bang for our buck on this timeline of 7 years, but who's counting? And it'll create that entire roadmap for us, of course, you know, subject to approval by city staff and potentially council too, but it'll provide us with a really, really important tool to electrification of our own facilities. Looking at opportunities for hopefully utility scale solar array and battery storage. So that's really large scale solar arrays that would be able to provide support to our electric grid infrastructure, and then battery storage that would provide you know, a certain level of resilience should, say, the power go out in a big storm, or a squirrel chews on the electrical wires. I don't know if anybody remembers that from last summer. And it would also provide a lot of support to our aging infrastructure and provides us some autonomy from the utility company. So the more that we're able to deploy renewable energy resources or distributed energy resources locally, the less we have to rely on the utility. We're also working on LEED for City certification. So exactly like LEED for buildings, we're actually really, really close to closing this up. I think by the end of the summer, certainly we'll have this all wrapped up and should be able to get certification. And it looks at really holistic sustainability in a given city. So it's not just energy and building performance. It looks at quality of life. It looks at how easy is it for people to access green space, all of those sort of things. And we're working with the systems engineering course at Cornell to facilitate that certification. We're also looking at a deconstruction ordinance, as Christine mentioned, and a more comprehensive waste plan, which the deconstruction ordinance, should it be approved, would fit into that more holistic plan. So how do we consider, you know, not just what are people doing with waste, but upstream, how can we actually control the production of waste, and how do we hold the producers of that waste accountable? Also looking at an Ithaca urban digital twin, which is just a 3D rendering, digital rendering of a city, wherever it may be, that would allow us to run modeling scenarios without actually having to pay any upfront financial cost. And it is able to produce these scenarios within milliseconds, as opposed to months and months and months of planning. So looking at some different scenarios that we could potentially model there, as well as the partners that we would need to actually produce this digital twin. And then finally, in collaboration with Cornell's PyTech program in the New York City campus, we have a fellow that's going to be doing some workforce modeling for us. So based on the data that we have available today, how long, given our existing workforce, would it actually take us to electrify all 6,000 buildings? And then on the flip side, how many more positions or contractors would we actually need to add to the workforce to achieve all 6,000 buildings electrified by 2030? And that will ultimately be a tool that any city could use. And my voice is tired.
So
That's all. That's all.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Sorry to disappoint.
Can I ask a question?
Please, yeah.
That last point about, so we have the workforce as being kind of a bottleneck potentially.
Mhm.
But so I just anecdotally heat pumps in my house, and there were supply chain issues, right? And so in addition to the workforce, I mean, is there anything we can do perhaps with the other cities in the green corridor to do some kind of like bulk purchasing where we can get ahead of that? Yes, you're thinking of that. or-
Yeah. It is something that is being thought of at the federal level about moving heat pump manufacturers into New York State, actually. It's not going to be the Mitsubishis or the Fujitsus, but it may be a smaller, up and coming manufacturer. But as far as, leveraging bulk purchase, my understanding, at least from Mitsubishi, is that there isn't necessarily the market to support it. So unless we can guarantee like 2,000 heat pump purchases, that they're really not interested. And that seems to be the sentiment sort of across the industry. But I think you're right that if we can do it at a regional level, maybe we can guarantee 2,000 if it's 200 here and 200 there or whatever. So yes, it's something that we're thinking about, but haven't necessarily found the capacity to start those conversations with other municipalities yet. But Rocky Mountain Institute is very interested in that.
Who did you say was doing the modeling?
It's the Tech program, so it's like their social impact computer science program. I may be butchering that, but it's a PhD candidate that's doing the modeling itself.
Well, so again, what? It's 20 up. What else do you do?
Well, actually, it looks like we've done everything else on our agenda. We set, we did the orientation, we set our meeting date, talked about agenda planning for next meeting. So
So, okay, I'll sort of make a observation, which is like, wow, is my observation, and which already, in terms of the number of initiatives, studies, and so on, going on simultaneously. So even like being able to just present them the way you did is kind of like, impressive that you actually know what all those things are enough to tell us about them, much less trying to move them forward in some kind of coordinated way. So I'm going to turn it into a more selfish version of that question, but I'm glad they're somebody else. But in a way, sitting on a commission like this is a little bit intimidating, to this things all at once. Like I feel like, hey, particularly in terms of expertise, I have some expertise in about maybe, I don't know, a handful of those areas. So I'm trying to translate it back into like what, you were trying to juggle all these things really sort of feel more essentially you're hoping to get out of us.
So when Lisa and I were initially talking about membership, we made a matrix of all of the areas that we thought we needed additional expertise. And then we selected based on that. So I feel like we have the expertise that's needed to get a lot of this done. But I also think it's important, and Lisa and I did this exercise a couple of weeks ago. I have just a running list of all of the projects that are ongoing or research areas that are ongoing. And we did a filter to see, okay, how many of these is the city solely leading? And it's really only like 5 of them. That we have partnerships all over the city and all over the country in some cases that are driving a lot of these projects forward. So even though they're city-owned initiatives, they're not necessarily a city-executed initiative. So Cornell Cooperative Extension being a really critical partner locally. And I should have put this in the slide. I have a partnership map that breaks down a lot of the different program areas and then branches out to the different program partners. And I can put that in
that would be great.
the drive. That may be helpful too. So I feel overwhelmed sometimes, but not all the time.
And I will also say that, part of what we've been doing over the last several months is really building capacity in other departments, working very closely with DPW, for instance, who is taking on some of the Department of Public Works and Transportation, taking on some of the load of electrification of the city fleet, for instance. But Rebecca does do an amazing amount of work. So I think that you're not supposed to know all of this. And, I think the commission,
Everybody.
right, literally. And I mean, part of this will be education. And as you're educated, the public is getting educated about all of this as well. So, I mean, that's
Maybe prioritize too, I mean.
prioritizing. Exactly. Yeah.
So just another question, the 3 seats that have not been filled yet. Are you asked us all who else we might imagine for city residents. Are you looking for particular people with particular backgrounds for each of those 3 seats? And
Yeah.
It might be helpful if you mentioned that as well.
Yeah, I know, at least personally, I'd really love to see some younger people in the room, and particularly renters. We have a lot of homeowners, I think, in this room, but maybe not any renters. So that's something that I'd really like to see. Would love to see some low-income individuals, people that identify as those climate justice communities. Were there
Yeah,
others that
that's-
immediately come to mind? Those are my big 3.
Okay, so just thinking about this, in a way, what I'm hearing, let's get back to my, if you will, I bring a certain kind of experience to the table as a homeowner. And maybe you could call it expertise, but I'm assuming the reason I get asked to be here is because of my expertise rather than my whether I own. So this goes back a little bit to kind of to the sense of discomfort, really a little bit about the extent to which this board really can function. Maybe you're trying to change that, but can function as sort of like a reflection of the community and connected to the community. Because I think we're a long ways from that right now.
Yeah, and I think that, so I see there being a little bit of a delineation, but ultimately meaning the same thing. We have content experts and we have context experts. Right now in the room, we have a lot of context or content experts that have expertise in various fields. Context experts would be that lived experience expertise. So I don't necessarily think that it's not expertise, it's a different kind. But yes, ideally, yes, we would have a reflection of the community, but at the end of the day, this is a very highly educated community compared to other communities.
So like I actually was on a call related, maybe I was on a call today with some of the staff from Black Power who I met at the park thing. So they said like they have some kind of community advisory committee already in place. I don't think we need to talk about it now, but it seems like to me like trying to understand, they're one important example, but us trying to understand what other kinds of advisory committees or community groups are, and as you know, I was also involved like with a little bit with the Climate Reality Project, like just trying, so we would understand better who else is like engaged various ways with, advising the city or advocating with the city, particularly around these kinds of topical areas, might be useful for us to understand.
The diagram that you were talking about, showing the map of all the agencies and organizations that we are collaborating with would be really helpful.
Yeah, I can share that.
Well, it is 10 to 7. So
We tried.
we tried. Would you, okay, 1 second. Tanya, would not Common Council provide some of the community context? Yes, I think they would. Right, anything else we want to talk about before we adjourn tonight? we will we're going to meet the second Monday, but we will find, second Mondays of every month, but we will find an alternative date for the next meeting.
And I'll just, as the incoming chair, I'll just invite people who want, if anybody, like, if you got scared away today, or you're particularly excited about something in particular that you think would be useful to talk about, but I'm down at time to talk, but I would love to do it. So please reach out to me.
Great.
All right, well, thank you
Yeah,
very
thank
much,
you.
everybody. And we'll see you soon. And we'll make these, the PowerPoint available, both PowerPoints available tomorrow. All right, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brass for that.
Get some food.